Hey, what's going on everybody? Alex here with Freedom Mowers. I hope you all are doing well. Today we're going to get going on a riding mower. This is a 2011 Ariens 42-inch cut riding mower, 6-speed. I recently just picked this up from a scrapper that has been bringing me some mowers. He sent over a picture of this. I was surprised at how well the condition of the body and everything is. Just right off the bat, I knew that the seat pad had come undone. He asked the homeowner who was getting rid of it. They had upgraded and got a new riding mower. They were having deck issues with this, and it had been parked since last year, and really that's about all I know on it. This is basically like your LT 1000s, 2000s, you know, just with the 6-speed 42-inch cutting deck. There is a 17.5 horse single intake on here, front tank. That's pretty much about it. Manual PTO. So yeah, and the cable has no tension on it, so we'll get into all that, see what we got to do. Hopefully this engine's good, and transmission, we'll see what we got to do to get this thing up running and cutting, driving just like it did when it was new. So let's jump to it. All right, there was one other thing I didn't note. There was no battery in here, and just as a quick glance on here too, you guys can see that the deck is kind of split out here on the back, and then there's also kind of a spot that's a little bit blown out on this side. When we get it off, we'll take a better look at the overall condition. I do have another deck for this. Between two of them, we should be able to have one good one. We'll just check the oil and the air filter on here, and then we'll hook up a jumper pack, see if we're getting power to what we need. It's pretty dark, and it is a little bit below the minimum line, so obviously we'll have to get that changed out, but should be fine just to at least hopefully get it rotating, and then if we can get it to crank up on some spray or something like that, then we'll go ahead and get that oil changed out. Check on our filter here. I mean, overall this machine seems like it's in pretty good shape. I mean, normally when I see these at this age, they're starting to fall apart. I mean, the deck looks like it's been worn out, but overall decent shape. Yeah, I don't like these particular air box styles where they have the stud that comes through. The actual stud is spinning on here. This one came loose, so let me see if I can get some penetrating spray on there and get this filter opened up. All right, I'm already struggling with that stud spinning, but I was able to, I don't know if you guys can't really see it, but I was able to get a glimpse in there. The air filter doesn't look too bad, so we'll just keep moving forward. Let me get the jumper pack hooked up, and we'll see if we can at least get the engine rotating, like I said. Or if I didn't say, I have already checked it, and we've got good compression on here, so we'll see where we're at. I've never even checked the fuel either. Who knows? There's definitely a lot of gas in there, but that smells actually very fresh, so we'll see. Let's get the pack hooked up, see what happens. Parking brake seems like it's holding. I do want to make sure that our throttle isn't sticking, or the governor, everything's smooth there. Our choke lever's working, so let's see what we got here. That runs incredible. It did die out at idle. We'll see if we can crank it a few times and get some fresh gas flowing through there. Yeah, it won't idle. You guys can hear that surge, but I mean, can tell right off the bat that's a healthy engine. We at least have a carb clean, and we definitely need to get that oil changed out. I'll go ahead and get the jumper pack in position over here on the side. We'll only run it here for just a minute, but we'll just check to see if the transmission's working, and then if the transmission seems like it's good, we'll go ahead and get it pulled all the way in, and we can start tearing into this thing to get it all set. Alright, well, all of our speeds are working. You guys can hear we've got a healthy engine. I'll go ahead and start draining that oil, show you guys that. We're gonna have to take that top cover off to figure out that bolt for the air filter. Carb clean. We'll end up getting this deck dropped on here. We'll check the pulleys underneath for the drive system. Obviously, you need to see what's going on with that mowing deck and go from there, but I think overall we've got a good start, so let's hop to it. And so I recently picked up one of the Harbor Freight fluid extractors for oil. Seems like everybody's got one now, and it seems like it's a whole lot easier. I've only used it on a push mower, and it didn't really seem like it did that well, so we're gonna try this out today on the riding mower and see if it does a little bit better. Basically, you just have the extraction tube that goes down into the fill port, and then you give like 7 to 10 pumps, and it's basically draw the oil out. So I'll show you guys how that works. I'm gonna maneuver this tube down in here, and then basically just get it down the bottom of the sump, and then we just start pumping. It does work obviously better too if your fluid is a bit more viscous. We didn't have a whole lot of runtime on this, so the oil's probably pretty thick, but we'll see how this does. So I mean, it's pulling it up on its own right now, so we'll let that go ahead and keep pulling out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this finish drawing out the oil. I will back this back out. We're going to pull the deck off because it'll be easier to go ahead and get that removed. Then we'll get it pulled back in here. We can start tearing into everything, and we can look at those drive pulleys on there too. So as far as the deck, I've got it dropped down all the way on here. Pin there, there's a pin there, and then you have this pin right here in the middle that needs to come out. This part stays with the mower, this crossbar, and then we have our tensioner cable. There is should be a washer and a cotter pin right on top there. We've got a cotter pin right here where the cable actually mounts up. Once you have those out, you can just take your cable and move that off to the side. And I believe that's it on this side. Now on the other, same thing with the drag link on the front. Now differently on this side, hopefully you guys can see, there is a cross member right here. This pin needs to come out, and then we should just have the one right here in the middle as well, and then slipping our deck belt off. So I'm gonna go ahead, just get all the pins pulled out, and then we'll get this slid out from underneath and get a better look at it. All right, well, I've got everything off. I did pull the drag links completely off on both sides just to make it easier. Now, one of the things I did notice just trying to get the mowing deck off is there is this bracket right here that is the anti-sway, and that is actually broke off on the welds. I'll get you guys a better look at that later, but we are more than likely going to have to order up a new bracket for that, and that is the reason why this deck was hanging down so far on this side. So and a quick first look, we'll see what we got. Now, I did notice that the belt was off from this flat idler right here, which has a little bit of noise but isn't too bad. This one over here has a little bit of noise. Yeah, and it's hung up where they normally do on this one. They almost always get bound up in this area, and that's why that cable wasn't working, but we'll go ahead and just take the belt off completely. Oh yeah, that one's nice and smooth. It's hitting the grass underneath. Yeah, there's some holes in this one. Wow, look at the blades on here. Let me see if I can get you guys set. There is nothing left of these blades. I'd say they got their money's worth on that. The tips on them, this one has a little bit more, but not much. Yeah, see, that bearing feels, it's got a lot of slop in it, so we'll see what we got to do. More than likely we'll probably end up using the other mowing deck, but see if there's some components on here we can take if needed. But we can at least get this in the shop now, get it up on the lift and see what we're looking like on the underside, and then we'll get this fuel system sorted out. All right, I did finally get this cover loosened up on here. What I had to do is I kept spraying it, and I had a pair of needle noses that fit right down in there, and a little bit of wrestling. Finally got this loose, so we can take a look finally at this air filter. Like I said earlier, when we took a peek, it didn't look too bad. I mean, it could definitely be replaced, but can get access to it now. But what I want to do before we get into the fuel system, I have disconnected. There's just a plug for the lights on here, and then we'll go ahead, take the hood off, and then we'll get this lifted up so we can look at the drive system on here. All right, we're lifted. What I want to do is take the tension off from the drive belt. So now we'll set the parking brake and we can get up underneath. So to me, right off the bat, this belt looks to be in really good shape. So that probably was changed at some point. So everything's looking good here. See if I can get a little slack in the belt without pulling this belt off. I can't really hear the flat idler, but we'll check real quick. It's not seized, it's moving, and there are no flat spots or damage on the flat part of the pulley. This is our V, and that one is pretty quiet. So I would say we are in good shape as far as the drive system on here. If there's anything else that comes up, we can take care of it, but so far that looks great under here. So, oh, and here is that bracket I was talking about. I almost forgot. This light is not the easiest to get in position, but this whole bracket right here is supposed to go around this bolt or get sandwiched behind it, and that is completely snapped off on there. So I'll go ahead and figure out what the part number is. I'll let you guys know on that, and we'll see if we can get that ordered up or where we got to get that from. Hopefully it's not discontinued, but now we can jump back to the upside and start digging into that Nicky carburetor. All right, so to get into this, what I need to do is I need to get the 4 bolts off the shroud. They're 3/8. There are 2 in the front, 2 in the rear, and then also there is a small, I think it's a 1/4 inch, but you can use a flathead as well, and take off our air filter. And then I'll go ahead and pull that up, show you guys when that's coming off, and then we'll get the carb pulled. All right, and real quick, this is what the hardware looks like that needs to come off on the upper shroud. These longer ones are for the rear, these are for the front, and there is that little 1/4 inch one, and that actually goes into plastic, so just be careful with it, especially when you go to put it back in. You don't strip that out. We do have a air breather hose that comes from the fuel tank, and then we should be ready to go. So we need to take 2 7/16 bolts. There is a, I'll show you guys on the back, there's a little breather hose that comes from your crankcase, and then underneath we'll have 2 5/16 studs. We need to pull this fuel line. We'll take a fuel sample as well, see if there's any water in there, and then we'll see what's in that carb. Just blew everything off with compressed air, that way we're not getting more dirt in here. But this is the breather hose I was talking about. Just need to slip that off, and then I think what we'll do is go ahead and take the fuel sample, and then we'll move the fuel hose out of the way So we just need to get our clamp, and then we'll get our line freed up here. I gotta get my, there we go. So we'll take a little bit here, go ahead and try to pinch that off. Then I'm just gonna move it above the tank. As long as it's above the fuel level in your tank, shouldn't have any issue with it leaking anymore. So I will give this just a minute to settle and see if there's any water in there. In the meantime, while we are waiting for that, and get our carb off, 7/16. So we got that loose. We do need to take the wire off for the anti-backfire. We can go ahead and take our 5/16 loose. So from here, what we'll do is we'll take our studs out, and then we'll slip our choke off to the side. That goes into the most outer hole. And then basically we just need to rotate the carb and give this a little twist. Make sure not to bend up that small wire. That's your governor assist. We are good there. We'll go ahead and get things out the way here, and we'll get cracked into this Nicky carburetor. All right, and what we will do is go ahead and grab a pair of vice grips, because these always like to strip out. Get a good hold on it. Crack that loose. Do the same to the other side. Got those both at least cracked loose. You got 2 screws on the bottom. Just make sure you got a good bit. I'll go ahead and take that loose. And we'll see what we got going on in our bowl here. So right off the get-go, the fuel looks good, and we'll check that sample here too, but there's a ton of debris down at the bottom. So I do need to make sure that our anti-backfire plunger is working too. We'll hook that back up to the machine with a jumper pack. I gotta get a pail to put that fuel in, but it does look pretty clean in here. We'll get this all apart. Fuel sample looks like, this isn't the cleanest on the outside, but I don't see any water collected in there, so I think we're pretty good with that. We can go ahead and just get this disassembled. I've got a little pie tin down here. I'm just going to put all the parts in. So I'm hoping that the O-ring is still good on here, because that's the part that's always a pain in the butt on these. And the only person that makes a proper O-ring for them is Briggs & Stratton. It's this O-ring right here. This is the one that always causes leaking fuel into the crankcase for the most part. But our main jet, which is right here, looks good. We'll get all this cleaned up. This gasket needs to come off, but I'll go ahead and get that peeled. Got to be very careful with this as well, because if you kind of start to stretch it out, then it won't ever go back down properly. So just be careful with it. Or if you're going to rebuild it, you know, make sure you get the proper rebuild kit, because I have tried aftermarket kits and they just don't work. Unless someone's tried one that did, let me know. So just be careful to lift this. Once you get it all kind of off from the seat, we'll get all this kind of wiped down and cleaned up. All right, and there's that. So definitely needs, I'm gonna hit it with some more compressed air, try to get as much dirt off as I can. And then what I'm gonna do is just throw this in the ultrasonic cleaner. I will do the same with the bottom. I am gonna go ahead and take that valve off, and we'll double check that real quick while this is going into the cleaner, then we'll reassemble. All right, I had that in the ultrasonic cleaner for about 20 minutes, and this is as clean as it's gonna get. There was a little bit of some pitting in the metal, but overall everything is nice and clean. Now, if you don't have an ultrasonic cleaner, you know, you just take your carb spray You want to make sure that all of the ports here on your emulsion tube are clean. There's a port here, here. Obviously you want to take that O-ring out. You want to spray through and make sure that where your fuel inlet comes through, there is, let's see, can't remember, but basically all of the orifices on here you're going to want to spray through here on the bottom. Let's see, on this side you want to go through each one of these ports, and then on the back there's actually the one spot that comes through, which is your air fuel. I left that in, and then there is one more little spot, and that's actually where your low speed fuel comes through. Now, as far as these go, I did go ahead and put a little marine grease on my O-ring, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So I did go ahead and put the gasket or O-ring, whatever you want to call this piece, back on. And then what you're going to want to do is actually come down on top of it, because you don't want your main jet to fall out, and also you want to make sure that that main jet right in the center is clear. So we've got to get this lined up, and the big thing is making sure that you're not forcing it, and you want that this piece right here to go into your O-ring and seat properly. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of get this going, and that seemed like it slid right into place. So now I will just push that up against there. I'm going to go ahead and put the needle and seat back on, or the needle and float. Make sure that your needle looks nice and clear and there's no indentions in it that are going to let fuel seep by. And we just need to put our rod back through. And then other than that, pretty much just screwing the bottom back on. And I will go ahead and show you guys real quick. I've got the fuel shut off, or the anti-backfire, hooked up. You can see the plunger. I'm going to go ahead and turn the key on. I've got the jumper pack hooked up, so you guys can see that retracting like it should. So we are all good there. We'll go ahead and screw that back into the bowl. Good gravy. Easier said than done. But that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and finish getting the carb all back together. You guys saw how it came off. I'll go ahead and get that reinstalled, and then we're going to try to crank this up and see if we can get it idling nice, as well as I am going to go ahead and throw in a new fuel filter too. So I'll show you guys once I get that all buttoned up. Alright, and just finished up putting the carb back on. I did top off the oil on here. We've got a brand new fuel filter, and as you guys can see, down into that carburetor, it is dry as can be. I've waited a few minutes just to make sure that our needle and seat is working and that that O-ring is not leaking. So far everything looks good. So let's go ahead and give it a crank. We'll let it run for a couple minutes without the upper shroud on here, and then I'll go ahead and get everything put back up on top. But we are good to at least try to run it and see how it sounds now. All right, here we go. Sounds great. Started right up like it's supposed to. Goes right down to idle. We'll see if it cranks right back up with no choke now at idle. Perfect. Well, that sounds great. What I am going to do is, I've got a battery down here that has like almost no cold cranking amps, but it does seem to hold about 12 volts of charge. What I can do is just throw that into the machine for now. That way we've got a battery. We can check to see if our voltage or our charging system is working. Get the upper shroud on. We can test the transmission a little bit better, see how everything works, and then we can move on from here and get to that cutting deck. So let me get this stuff buttoned up, get a battery thrown in here, and take it out for a spin. All right, I got everything up front buttoned back up. I got the headlights connected and the hood back on. Jumper pack hooked up, so we'll go ahead, crank it. I'll disconnect the jumper pack. I'm gonna put the multimeter on real quick and see where we're at. We should be probably around, well, should be around 13 volts. This should be a little bit lower charging system on here because there's no electric PTO. The only thing it needs to run basically is the headlights and the anti-backfire. So crank it up, see where we're at. Got no headlights, but might be the bulbs are blown. Charging at like 14.8 volts at high idle, but this battery was only about 10 volts, so I don't know if it's trying to compensate. I'm going to go ahead and hook the jumper pack back up so that we've got good voltage in our system, and then I'll recheck to make sure we're not overcharging. Be good there. Now that we've got about 13 volts coming from our jumper pack, it's not overcharging now. All right, let me get this stuff out of the way. We'll take it for a spin. Have all of our gears. That was 6 right there. So we'll just go from 6 no leaks on this engine or anything else. You guys saw it earlier. I mean, it's, besides it having a lot of dirt on it, it's a very clean machine. I think this thing was taken care of and serviced. So we'll go ahead and get this pulled back over the shop, and we'll figure out what we got to do on that mowing deck. All right, and here we are a few days later, waiting on parts to come in. Some should be in today. So I told you guys that I had another mowing deck. We could absolutely use this deck, but the other one was in a little bit better shape. I think we'll just go that route. Now, I thought that I could just swap out the bearings on this one, but I'll show you guys. Underneath, I had forgotten on this mowing deck that I guess it's just one of them. This one of the bearings is already out, but this one over here was broken in 2 places. So I have some spindles coming in the mail. Now, the other thing is the idlers on here are noisy, but the idlers on that one are pretty quiet. So I'm gonna end up changing over those idlers. I'm gonna put some brand new spindles and blades on this one and see about getting the deck chute swapped over. I'm gonna go ahead and bring that mower deck into the shop and leave this one out here. We'll take the parts off from it, get this one all prepped and ready to go. All right, so to take the spindles out, I'm gonna do that second. They're a 1/2 inch, and usually on these Craftsman ones, they almost always seem to snap the bolt off. Now on the idlers here, I did go ahead and crack that one loose. These are both 9/16, so just got those cracked loose. Take it off with the impact. And it's on a carriage bolt, I believe, on these, so you kind of have to pull up on it as you're taking it off. I'll see if these come loose. I'm not gonna make you guys sit here and watch me pull all these or break these bolts off, but sometimes they'll come out. Most of the time they don't. Yeah, most of the time they end up just like that. So, like I said, we've got the new spindles coming in. I gotta take this tension spring off for the brake. But I'm gonna end up just taking these out. I'll show you guys once I got this deck pretty much all back together. There's not a whole lot to see. Alright, so I just unboxed one of the spindles on here, and I mean, there's really not a whole lot to it. 2 bearings, the housing, the shaft, nut washer. It did come pre-threaded already, and I'll just go ahead and verify that these bolts actually start. I did just check to make sure they're a 1/2 inch on here. So what I am going to do is I've got some blue thread lock I'm going to go ahead and put on these. That way they don't back out. I am going to put the deflector back on the bottom, so basically it's just going to set just like that, come from the underside, and I'll go ahead and get one started, show you guys that. I do have to take the pulleys off the other mowing deck just to put on top, but you'll see how it all goes. It's all pretty simple on these. It's just kind of getting everything lined up. That's about it. Pretty close in place. We want to make sure that our guard for our tab for the spring for the brake goes into that, and then I need to go ahead and put a little thread lock on those bolts. My 1/2 inch. Just kind of snug these up a little bit. Alright, got a phone call. I gotta take this. But snug those down. I'll show you guys when the pulleys are going on the top. I couldn't get the top nut all the way tightened down yet because I need some leverage with the blade. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to put the blade on now, and then I'm gonna end up doing the whole other side off camera. But what comes with the spindle kit is hardware as well for the blade. So you've got a bolt, you've got a lock washer, flat washer, and then it just goes right on. Match up your 5-star with the hole, and then just thread that right in. And once I get the blade tightened down, then I can tighten up my top. So I'll go ahead and get this blade on there. So that blade is on. I can set it back down and then get the top bolt. And also you need to make sure that with your spindle there is notches in it, and that lines up. That's what's going to keep your pulley in place. Basically, let me show you the other one here. It's got all these little grooves in it, and that needs to sit right into the top of that spindle shaft. But that's pretty much about it. I'm going to go ahead, get that tightened down, get the other one on. I'll route the belt, show you guys everything, and then we should be ready to reinstall. Alright, just finished everything up, got the belt routed. This is how it goes on here. Now our brakes are working just like they're supposed to, releasing. I did take the spring off the other mowing deck because it was missing the spring on this one. You guys saw how I got it off from there, so I'll get it on and we'll go ahead and test out the mowing deck on it, and then we can finish up basically getting the seat glued and if there's any other little thing that needs done, and then we'll give it a full detail and a full shakedown. Alright, so when we were driving this, when I went to go into first gear is sitting right about there, and it needs to come up just a little bit, that way it lines right up with it and it's a little bit easier to tell, you know, what gear you're in. So underneath there are 2 half-inch bolts. I'm gonna try to do this where you guys can see as I do it. I just gotta crack these loose. I've just got a long extension on here. Now what I'm gonna do, so see if we get any movement on it now. All right, there we go. Now we got it free. All right, so where we were at before was way back there, and we want to come up just a little bit. All right, I'm just gonna snug it a little bit and then see where we're at, because you don't want to go too far with it either, but you kind of have to just mess with it. So yeah, that's about perfect right there. So that is almost directly in line with the 1, and then we got 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 right at the end, and then it goes right into reverse too. So we will actually leave that right where it's at. So all I'm gonna do is just snug it. I'm gonna double check it one more time, and then I'm gonna tighten them all the way down. So one more time. Yep, that is right in line with the 1, 2. All right, so that is it. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten that all the way down, and we will call that good right there. And one of the other things we had to do while I'm waiting on that part is to get this seat re-glued. I was trying to get everything basically prepped. I basically went and chipped off what was left of the old glue on the edge of the seat, if there was any, and then some of the stuff I couldn't get off, I went ahead and just scuffed it with some 80 grit. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and apply the glue to the edge of the seat here, kind of right in this little groove, and I cut the end here, I think at 3/8 of an inch. So we'll see how this bead goes down. So I've got my bead down on there. We'll go ahead and put the seat down. The big thing is you want to make sure where the seat obviously is going to meet the pan, there's enough glue. So I may end up just putting a little bit on the outside of the seat edge too, and then I'll show you guys once I get this clamped down, because it's going to take me a couple of minutes. Alright, and this is what it looks like clamped down. Put a couple of 2x4s across top and the bottom, and got that basically sandwiched against the back plastic. So we're gonna let this cure up for a couple of days. Some of these side spots where it couldn't really clamp down that well, I do have some black caulking that will go over that to kind of hide it. But I mean, honestly, in a lot of situations you can just throw a seat cover on. I just wanted to try this out since someone suggested it, and we'll see how this goes. But as soon as I get that bracket, we should be all set to try this mower out. All right, it's about a week later. Finally got my part in, the anti-sway. So this bracket, get you guys down here where you can see right there on that edge there is a carriage bolt, and then right here on this edge there is a nut and bolt. Basically it just mounts right up to the frame, and then it has this little tab here where my pinky's at, and that's what actually connects into this arm right here, and that just keeps that side to side sway. Now I just took the clamps off the seat, and that flex glue seems like it's working really well. I did kind of pull on it just to see, and it feels nice and sturdy. Now obviously we've got this big spot of white glue on here, which I kind of expected, because a lot of times the side, they kind of shrink up after time. So Mr. Tecumseh on YouTube, he does a lot of repairs. I hadn't seen anything in a little while, but he had some great tips a while back. He said that this Dynaflex works really good after you're done gluing up the seats to just kind of fill in that seam and make it all black. I've done it before and it turns out great. So I'll probably do that after we close out the video. At this point, I think we're pretty much done with it. I've just got to pop on the bracket, give this a detail, and then we're going to give this thing a full shakedown and see how it goes. All right, and here we are with the basically all finished project. We do need an air filter, and I got to finish up with that Dynaflex I was telling you guys about. But overall, this cleaned up really nice. I did buff out the headlight lens. We got LED lights. I'll show you guys that in the front. I've gone through, changed the oil, serviced the fuel system on it. Engine runs great. Rebuilt the deck. The belt was still good on the transmission and the deck, but you guys saw we got new spindles and blades, and basically everything else is working good. I did make a little minor adjustment on the brakes just to make sure they were tight enough, and we did also have to adjust that shifter. But other than that, this machine turned out really good. I'll probably end up taking some pictures after I finish out this video, as long as everything works as it should. But we're gonna go ahead and give this thing a shakedown. I'll get you guys all set up. Go ahead and crank it, show you guys those headlights. And smooth. I'm sure it's probably showing that the lights are flashing in the video, but that's just the frame rate. They're not doing that. Looking at it with my eyes. But yeah, this thing, good looking machine. It's not the best machine in the world, but these things will run forever, and you can put a new engine on them, and parts are readily available. So let me get you guys set up, and we're gonna test this thing out. And one more look after finishing up. This thing looks great. Let me know what you guys think this would sell for in your area. Trying to think, after I finish up with that seat and this thing is all fully serviced, I would say probably 550, 600, because it is a 6-speed, not the hydro. But I mean, everything else on it, this tractor works great. Everything functions. It still has the mow and reverse feature. All the safety switches work. Like, I usually try to make sure everything is 100%, and I think this one's ready to go. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I do have a bunch more projects coming up, more than I can probably handle as always, but we are gonna keep pumping along here, and I'm gonna keep bringing you guys content. I know we had a couple month break, but I had a baby and life has been hectic, so bear with me, and I promise I'll bring you guys more projects. So on that note, let freedom ring, let the small engine sing. I'll see you all in the next one.